Up next, a walking tour of downtown Bethesda. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Gail Street, and welcome to Paths to the Present. Today, Bethesda is a bustling city with a slew of high-rise buildings filled with residences and businesses. It's home to major corporations as well as prominent federal complexes. Nightlife in Bethesda is hopping with the many restaurants, bars, and theaters, and the metro station counts nearly 10,000 boardings each workday. It's a busy place. In a moment, we'll turn the clock back for a look at downtown Bethesda through the eyes of someone who knew it when.
If you wanted a contract or you wanted a job, you saw Dr. Perry.
But first, time for the history quiz. We're resurrecting an old question because this one has a connection with Bethesda. Do you know why we should remember this person? Lily Stone lived from 1862 until 1960 in the vicinity of Seven Locks and River Roads. Left a widow in 1921, Mrs. Stone revived a business that lay dormant on her family's property. Evidence of that enterprise can still be seen today, especially in downtown Bethesda. What was that business? And for bonus points, what county institutions did she help create? Think you know? Stay tuned. I'll give you the answers at the end of the show. There was a time when Bethesda was a quaint small town, a place where you knew just about all of your neighbors. In his 1995 book, Bethesda, A Social History, Bill Offutt chronicled the history of his beloved hometown up through the end of the Second World War. Mr. Offutt has lived in Bethesda his whole life, and he's seen a lot of changes over the years. On today's show, he leads us on a walking tour, highlighting some of the sights from the early days of Bethesda.
Hi, I'm Bill Offutt. This is my town. I've lived in Bethesda for 80 years, and I wanted to show you today some of the things that are left from the good old days before they started putting up all these high-rise buildings and the metro got here. We're standing in pretty much the middle of downtown Bethesda as it is today, and behind me is the Bank of Bethesda, which for a generation was the tallest building in town. It dates to 1926. The bank was actually started in 1919, but the building, which sits with Rockville Pike on the right-hand side and the old road to Georgetown on this side, on the apex that marks the middle of town. The founding president was Walter Tuckerman, who developed Edgemoor, was the developer of a line of stores here that went all the way down to where the post office is now. Rockville has a Confederate soldier, but we've got the Madonna of the Trail. And we've had her here since 1929. Not right here. She used to be on the other side of the post office and had to move when Metro came to town and they wanted to put an elevator in. She's got 11 sisters across the United States, mostly in small towns coast to coast, to honor the pioneer women. And we're proud of her. She's a great symbol of our town. This is our Depression-era New Deal post office, circa 1938. That was a great year for Bethesda. In 1938, we got a nice movie theater up there, a twin to the Silver over in Silver Spring, and we got a 10-cent store the same year, and we got this nice post office, which was finished in the same kind of stone as the Bank of Bethesda. This Stonyhurst microschist became the stone of choice for almost all the commercial buildings of the era. Inside, there's a fine mural on the wall, shows the farm women's market and farm women at work. Post office has been sold. Postal Service got $4 million for this site, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to it. Over here is the police station. Building went up about 1960, replaced a nice-looking courthouse that was built in 28. Across Montgomery, on this side, is the first skyscraper in Bethesda, 7 stories high, 75 feet. It was built 10 years after World War II. This is the oldest road in Montgomery County. It's an Indian trail in the beginning. In other words, it was here before we got here. It wasn't paved until the late 20s, and between 1890 and 1935, it had a single-track streetcar line running down its middle. This is Bethesda's oldest office building, Dr. Perry's building. It went up in about 1930. And Dr. Perry was something else. He was not only the best doctor and most popular one in town, he was also a politician of note. He was E. Brooke Lee's man on this side of the creek. And this building is our oldest office building by far. Hey, you want to see something cool? Come in here. This is a photograph of Dr. Perry's office building shortly after World War II, when Hugo Brooks had the first floor. He was a photographer of some note. As a matter of fact, he shot our wedding. And as you can see, the office building was doing swell then, just as it is now. Down this way, we'll take a look at the old railroad bridge and the air rights buildings. Kind of interesting, both of them. Believe it or not, we're standing on top of a bridge here, a bridge that was built by the B&O. From 1910 and for the next 75 years, the railroad ran freight trains right through Bethesda and right under Wisconsin Avenue. So down there is where the hiking biking trail is now. We're standing on the railroad bridge, and these are the air rights buildings. They're called that because all the builders could buy was the right to put them over the railroad tracks. They couldn't buy the right of way. When the railroad stopped running in the 1980s, the county bought the right-of-way and made a very popular hiking, biking trail. Now, some people are talking about putting tracks back down. This block had some of the first stores in Bethesda, including the very first, which was called Darcy's, and it was right here where this bank is. A little farther down the road, this is the area where there was a toy store called Lowen's, and it was a very popular store. This is the Farm Women's Market, or more technically, the Farm Women's Cooperative Market. And when it was founded, that cooperative part was important. The market's a depression baby. Farms were failing, people were losing their homes, they couldn't pay their taxes, and the women got together and formed a co-op to sell their goods, both what they grew and what they could make at home, and they were successful. They burnt their mortgage within 2 years, and they've been doing fine ever since. The building dates to 1932, and the ladies have been doing business here on 2 days a week, every single Wednesday and Saturday ever since. It's different now because we have these vendors and because the world is different now. So there aren't as many farm products inside, but there's still some vendors in there that have been there 50 or 60 years. His family's been here since the 1940s. 40 what? 42.
Every Wednesday and Saturday, growing up and everything, I was here, going to school, you know, that type of thing. So I learned how to work being here.
All right, what we have here is what's left of the first shopping center in Montgomery County, which was L-shaped and had a parking lot in the middle. It opened in the winter of 36-37. On this side, it had a grocery store and a great big drugstore here called Whittlesey's. And then down over the side here is more of what's left of the shopping center. Down there's the thrift shop. It dates back to the Second World War as well. This is Warren's Row here, the first strip mall in Bethesda. The buildings are distinctive because of that kind of English half-timbered look. We had everything in this thing. Had a market on both ends, had a Chinese laundry, had a pool hall, had a drugstore, and several other little stores as well. And the whole row has managed to survive even though it was built in the middle 1920s. The Warren brothers developed all the property back in there in bungalows and colonials. They called it Leland. This is a phone company, and you can see it's the same kind of stone that you saw elsewhere. And if you come around here, that's the old building that they built in the late 20s, buried inside the much bigger new one. They moved down here when they finally got 2,000 telephones in Bethesda and had to get the switchboard out of the ladies' front room, which is where it was. A block south is St. John's Norwood Parish, the Episcopal church and the second oldest church in Bethesda. Got started in the 1870s. And my grandfather named it. As a matter of fact, St. John's, the Norwood Parish, came from another family. This facade covers an old store called Jellif's, a store for ladies, a very classy one that came to Bethesda in 1942, which is the same time that Palais Royal took over the Sears store up near the Farm Women's Market. One more bunch of stores. This row of stores is called Saks Row. It was built in the late 1920s and was all faced like you see the upper story here. All these facades are new. One of the remarkable survivors in this row is this Chinese restaurant, which used to be called the Smiling Buddha. And it's been here since the beginning, since the 30s. On this end of Saks Row was the first car dealer in Bethesda, Northwest Ford. It's now a Bentley dealer, believe it or not. Bethesda used to have literally a dozen car dealerships, everything. Dodge, DeSoto, Pontiac, Packard, even Studebaker and Nash. This odd-shaped building was Berga's Furniture Store, a very nice store. When my wife and I got married about 60 years ago and came to Bethesda and rented an apartment for $85, we came here and we bought a sofa, a chair, and 2 tables for $300, and we still use them. This is the last remnant of Bethesda's 19th century buildings. This old store was built 1886 or so, and was started by a family called Wilson. And in the 30s, the Broadhurst took it over and it became Community Paint and Hardware, which was by far the best loved store in Bethesda. When they quit, when they sold this property and sold this store so that Air Rights building could be built up there, their customers actually threw a party for them. It's remarkable. It was moved down here in the 80s. Back end was cut off and it was put on a new foundation. This photograph shows where the old hardware store used to be, which is there. Here's the railroad tracks, the B&O tracks. There's the bridge we stood on. And the store was moved from here down to here to put another Air Rights building across here. Well, that's about it. That's some of the old buildings and some of the old places. And I hope you enjoyed it. Come visit us next time you're in the neighborhood.
So, how did you do on the history quiz? Lily Stone left an indelible mark on Montgomery County. In 1921, at the age of 60, she created Stonyhurst Quarry on her family's property, reviving a business her grandfather began in 1830. Stonyhurst stone was used in many a building, some of which you saw today: the Bethesda Post Office, Saks Row, and the phone company building, just to name a few. Mrs. Stone is also considered the founder of the Montgomery County Historical Society, and she had a hand in the design of our county's seal, as well as our flag. Well, that's all the time we have for this show. If you have comments for us or ideas for future shows, send an email to paths.present@verizon.net. Be sure and tune in again next time as we follow more paths to the present. See you then.